Good afternoon, I'm Reed Durr here. We have a group from the Christian Liberty Network here. We are here to interview with Sue Trombino of Women Impacting the Nation. And just so you see who we are, we have to my left, we have Richard on the far left and Tim behind him, and Stephen to my immediate left, myself, Reed Durr, Sue, Ken, Wayne, and Mary. What we're going to do here is I'm going to explain basically what the Christian Liberty Network is about, and then I'm going to ask Sue to give her testimony of faith and her involvement with women impacting the nation, and then if any have questions, we will go turn to questions. So our vision as the Christian Liberty Network is, as we say on our cards, we hold to a Judeo-Christian worldview. We believe Christianity is under attack, not only spiritually, but also culturally and politically. We believe that we're called upon as Christians to boldly defend our faith and to preserve the values that it embodies and to protect the liberties that we have as Christians and Americans. But we're responsible to preserve the blessings of the Christian faith and the liberty that we have. And we have three purposes, or what we call our mission: to alert churches of all denominations to the cultural and political threats that we see today in modern day America. We want to open lines of communication with churches of various denominations and to foster cooperation in the defense of our common Christian faith. And we want to encourage individual Christians to know how to defend their faith and to support their churches. And we want to coordinate actions between and among the churches in defense of the Christian faith. That's our purpose since we've organized in June of 2021. And we're so glad to have Sue here with us. Sue Trombino is with Women Impacting the Nation, and she has quite a testimony of her coming to faith and her involvement here with Women Impacting the Nation and her effort to come and to help us to carry out our mission. So Sue, I want to turn it over to you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Reed, for inviting me, all of you, with the Christian Liberty Network. We're humbled. I'm here with my right arm, my battle buddy, Debbie, who's in the back there. But we're very humbled to be here. And just, to tell everybody, our statement, our mission statement for us with Women Impacting the Nation is that we educate and equip women and men with knowledge of God's truth about our faith, our family, and our freedoms, and then we help support those who take a stand for the Judeo-Christian principles upon which our country was founded. So we kind of stir the pot, we get you to think, unfortunately we become a nation of non-thinkers, and Karl Marx said a nation of non-thinkers is easily led. But we love to educate and equip. I'm not from here. I actually was born in Caracas, Venezuela. So don't let the blonde hair fool you. And if you speak Spanish, you better be very careful what you're saying because you never know who's listening. So what I will say is, tienes que tener cuidado lo que estás diciendo porque nunca saben quién está escuchando. So there you go. I do speak Spanish. It's not just a talk. But I was born in Caracas, Venezuela, to incredible mom and dad. I was telling Pastor Ken and Pastor Wayne that I've never asked the Lord why on anything I've done and stuff that's happened in my life, except for one thing. I've always said, why did you bless me so? I was blessed to have an incredible mom and dad. I have lived overseas my whole life. My father worked for Standard Oil, so he was kind of like the middleman between the company and the government. And so I was born in Caracas, and we moved to San Salvador, Nicaragua, and then Puerto Rico, West Africa, Madagascar, Spain, and then to the Orient.
Amazing.
And Khartoum, Rio. And so I know God had a plan for me, not at the time. You just kind of go, you're just growing up, and you just go with wherever your mom and dad go. But my parents were, they didn't talk about it. It's the old school. They didn't really talk about their faith a lot. My mother did more than my dad. I always tell everybody my dad was a man of very few words. I got all those genes. And but I'll go very quickly here. But my dad was a man of his word. In Spanish, he always say, he didn't say to me, this is what you do. He just modeled it. and it was tu palabra es tu palabra, your word is your word. And I watched him if he said something, he would do it. And my mom, she was Presbyterian, my dad was Catholic, but just followed Christ. And so they modeled their faith. And so I just learned from that. I just knew that my word was my word. And so I was blessed to be in that arena, because I did get to meet presidents of countries, ambassadors, all that. But it was my parents were incredibly humble. They didn't just say, oh, this is what I did or anything like that. But then after living through all that, every country I've lived in, there's been a coup. So I get that. I don't know if that's good because we're here in America, so I don't know if that's if it's just following us or what. But so I get, socialism, I get communism, Marxism, I've lived all of that. And so, but coming to the United States, my grandparents lived here in Sebring, Florida. And make a long story short, I went to Florida Southern College, and God just had a plan for me. I met my husband. My father said, either get a job or go back and get your master's. Well, I decided to get my master's. And of course, my husband said he thought I got my master's in an MRS degree. That's not true. I got it, But I went to get my master's, and that's where I met my husband. We've been together 43 years. I was only 15 years old. I'm teasing. And, we have an incredible son, and he's 30 years old. But my parents, my faith, my parents just modeled it. I didn't have an aha moment. When we lived in Madagascar, I went to a Lutheran missionary school. It was just always modeled, and always, the foundation was biblical. And so, but coming here to the States, I went to Florida Southern College. Then after I met Michael, my husband, God just had a plan, and just little by little, it was almost like a drip, drip, drip. It was, I just knew the Lord, but I kept getting closer to Him. He just kept drawing me close. And I ended up, and I won't get through the whole story, of course, but I ended up going to a Reclaiming America with D. James Kennedy.
Amen.
And that's where I met a lot of godly patriots, from Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel, David Barton of Wall Builders, Rick Green, of course, D. James Kennedy, the Brights, Brad Bright, Vonette Bright. God just kept surrounding me with incredible godly patriots. I didn't know about that, but I knew that when they were talking at the first Reclaiming America, my eyes were being opened, and I thought, oh my gosh, I learned that in I saw our country going kind of down the toilet, really, let's be honest. That was way back when, in 2005. And I just was, I learned that in 1962 and 63, that's when they took out prayer and Bible out of the school.
That's right.
And it was really, that's when it came to fruition. One woman took out prayer and Bible out of school, but it was the pastors that were telling their congregations not to get involved in politics. So everything I was listening to, I was like, what is going on? And it was contrary to everything I was taught. My dad, very much military in our family. My dad was a 1st Marine Division Guadalcanal, so I bleed Semper Fi. So, but for all of you, if any of you have served, I thank you for your service. I'm very much into the military. But the Marines are right up there. They're the ones. They're the ones that come in there and they take care of you all.
Absolutely.
But Semper Fi, right? Always faithful.
Right.
And my mom was a wave. She wanted to be a Marine, but the day she and her best friend went to get in, they were closed. So they went over to the waves, to the Navy.
Oh,
so
interesting.
she was a wave. And so I was brought up with that, just that passion for the men and women that served our country.
Amen.
And then, of course, with my parents having that, my dad was from Spain, so that's where I get my coloring. Most people don't realize that Northern Spaniards and Northern Italians are all blonde and blue-eyed. And I married an Italian, by the way. That's why, hence Trombino. It was Echeverria, but now it's Trombino. So, but make a really long story short, I ended up coming home, and just I had a wrestling moment with the Lord, and saying, Lord, in 1962 and 63, I was living in Nicaragua, and I thought I was maybe 7 years old. And I thought, what could I have done at 7 years old? And it was almost audible, and the Lord said, well, what are you going to do now? And I thought, I'm just a mom. I'm just a wife. What can I do? And I thought, well, I live in Boca Raton at the time, Boca Raton, Florida. And I thought, there's a lot of godly women here. How could we not make a difference? And as God is my witness, the phone rang. And of course, it was back then when the phone was on the wall. And I had just met 2 weeks before at Reclaiming America, I had met Matt Staver, who is one of the top constitutional attorneys in this country.
Right.
And I had met him and his wife, Anita, and he called me. And to this day, we laugh because, as you can see, I can talk a lot. And he doesn't remember why he called me, but all he did was when the phone rang, I picked it up and I said, hello. And he says, I hear this person on the phone saying, is Sue there? I said, this is she. Who's this? He goes, this is Matt Staver. Well, Matt is a big high muckety muck, and I put my hand over the phone. And I went, oh my gosh, it's Matt Staver. Nobody's in the house, just me. And I went, oh, hi, Matt. And we just started talking, and it was so God, because I said, Matt, I was just having a wrestling moment with the Lord. And I said, you know, you empower women, and now we've added men, of course, but I'll tell you that in a second. But you empower people with knowledge, women with knowledge, but it has to be knowledge in God's truth. I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to start a group. No, I said, I'm having this wrestling moment. I said, we're going to have this group, and I'm going to expect, now hear my words here, out of the body experience, but words, you know, your life and death is in the power of the tongue, right? What you confess is what you get. But I literally said, and I just met this man 2 weeks before, I said, I'm going to expect, I'm going to form a group, all these women are coming together, and we're going to read these books, and I'm going to expect every author of every book to come into my home and speak to this group, a group I don't even have yet. And I said, and we're going to start with your book, Take Back America.
Oh my.
And what he said was, so what I hear you say, Sue, is that you want me to come into your house to speak to your group I don't have yet, and just talk to your group. I said, oh my gosh, I said, now I know why you're a good attorney. That was great deduction. Now, who says that? Who says that with somebody, a high muckety muck that you just met 2 weeks ago? Well, 2 weeks later, he and Anita were in my home. I had 27 women, and that's how we started.
In 2 weeks' time, you had 27 women.
Women impacting the nation. But what I want to encourage everybody is this. Just because we started with 27 women, I started what's called Win Talks. Win Talks are just book clubs. You meet twice a month for an hour and 20 minutes. We start everything with a prayer, a pledge, and a praise. And you get educated with truth and facts, not emotion, not conjecture, and really not even our opinions, because we're all entitled to our opinion. We're just not entitled to our own facts. Amen. And so we get together and we just read the books together. And all these books, I had met every author, and I put them in the order because I've been a BSF leader. And I love hymns, and so we put them in the order that we...
Tell us what BSF is.
That's Bible Study Fellowship.
Thank you.
And so that's why the hymns come into that. And I just love the hymns because of the wording. We don't have the words anymore in a lot of the songs today. But so that's how a Win Talk started. But then as we started going, I went into a church. There was about 75 people at the church. That's how I do one big talk, and then we started. All these Win Talks started. But then all of a sudden, we were growing into different cities, and then all of a sudden, people just started kind of waiting feet, just kind of going out and not doing it. And people would say, "Oh yeah, we'll get together," and then they wouldn't get together, and that's where I had a wrestling moment. My board had said, "Sue, we need business cards, we need a phone number, we need all this stuff," and I said, "Okay." So I went and did all that. Then on the way to the post office, to FedEx, to mail all this, the cards and everything, to a group in Umatilla, Florida, near Mount Dora, I had a serious wrestling moment with the Lord, and I was very upset. I said, "Lord, all these people, they say one thing and they do another. They say they're going to do these groups and they're not coming around. It's like pushing a wet noodle. And if I give you my word, I'm going to be here." And I try to teach that at Win. And so I was getting upset because everybody was like, "Oh, so I don't have time. I got to go play tennis. I got to do this and that." So, okay, so I get to the FedEx. I cry every day, but I don't cry in public. But the gal behind the counter was Spanish, and she gives me the paper to sign, to fill out. I started filling out everything. It was the first time I'd ever filled out our P.O. box and really written our phone number. And I started writing out our post office box, and all of a sudden I look, and the tears start coming down my face, and she looks at me in Spanish and she says, "Todo está bien, everything was okay." I said, "I'll be right back." So I went outside, I called every one of my board members, not one picked up. I was very upset, I called them again, not one picked up. And finally the Lord said, "Is this about them, or is this about you and me? Did you just not have a wrestling moment? Is this, I'm telling you to do this. I'm calling you to do this." And what it had on our, on all of my little bands here, it's 2 Chronicles 7:14. Well, our P.O. box was 714. Our phone number was, the last numbers were USA, whatever. Everything correlated. Now,
Wow.
some people say, "Oh, that's coincidence." No, it's not. When you're with the Lord, it's not coincidence.
Right.
And from that moment on, I said, "Lord, I will follow you no matter the ups and downs, because if it's about Him, then you just follow. If we're looking for the kingdom builders, not the castle builders. And there's too many people out there castle building, and if it doesn't have the money or the people, then they kind of quit and everything else. Well, we have been up and down, and we are just faithful at win, because our tagline is, we not only talk truth and we take action, but our tagline is, when we show up, we win. And David Barton always says, if only a quarter of the Christians would vote God's way, we would not be in the mess that we're in.
That's right.
This is not about, and I know some people that are listening or watching, and pastors especially, they all say we don't want to get involved in politics. But somebody's worldview is going to win out. Everybody has a worldview. It's either biblical or pagan. And it's not about the donkey or the elephant. It is about the lamb.
That is one of my favorite sayings that you have said for quite a long time.
Well, it is. It's what does God say? Not what I feel, not what I'm going through, but what does the Word of God say? And if we follow the Word of God, then I think, God is faithful and He has a plan for you, Jeremiah 29:11. And so we've just really followed in that, and God has, blessed me with incredible board. We're all volunteers, and that's kind of what we do. And we just want to edify our pastors, or we're looking for our watchmen. And so that's just a little bit of kind of what we do. So does that answer your question?
I think so. Do others of you have questions for Sue as we get our introduction to
Well, I hear
Sue?
you saying, Sue. Yeah. Just a joke, just an attorney.
I know, I love that, but I love that, because it's like, yeah, what I hear you say is this and this and this, yes.
Pleasure to hear.
Well, Sue, what would you say to somebody who says, "No, I'm just going to sit back and pray and make sure everything's okay that way"? What would be a good response? If I was talking with some friends just recently, and they said, "No, we don't want to get involved. We don't want to get active. We're just going to pray through all of this."
Well, that's a great question, Mary. And I'm surrounded here by incredible godly men, pastors and deacons, and what I say is, and if I'm wrong, I really want to be really corrected. I always say we want to be learned and teachable, right? But I believe, God breathes He had His providential hand on America. We are not perfect in America, but we are exceptional. And God says that we're supposed to be a good steward of what He's been given, what He's given us. Stewardship is not just money. It's everything.
Amen.
What you're saying, what lens do you look through the world at? And if you're a Christian, and that you have to define what Christian means, because some people say they're Christian, but they don't walk in that. But what lens do you see the world at? And so what I say is, number one, are you being a good steward of what God's given you? And this isn't, I'm looking for, especially with pastors, I'm looking for somebody that's biblically correct, not politically correct. And so if God has gifted you, and we had on our Wind Talk Radio, we had a segment on your talents. Everybody has talents, right? What are you going to do with those talents?
Right.
Now, you may be an intercessor, you may be a prayer warrior. That's awesome. Prayer is the foundation.
Absolutely.
Right? So we don't want to be like the waves of the sea, being tossed to and fro, but you have to have a foundation so that we're not, it's not on the sand. If you have a prayer, that's a solid foundation. But prayer without action is dead.
Thank you.
Okay? And so you can be a prayer warrior, but get involved, because if you don't, your vote or your non-vote is a seed, and you will reap what you sow. Again, hence the mess that we're in. And like I said earlier, David Barton says, if only a quarter of the Christians would vote their biblical values, we would not be in this
Isn't that
mess.
amazing?
And So I would say be a good steward. And then he says to occupy until I come. And what I have said, and I go off on a little tangent here, but I've said to some pastors, some people, some churches will say, well, Sue, God, we all know the ending, and we know that God's in control, and I'll say, okay, that's awesome. And some churches are saying, well, Jesus, he's coming, February of 2022 at 2:00 in the afternoon on February 4th. The other one is going, no, he's coming in the evening, and he's coming March 8th. Now, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I'm blind. I don't know what, but I do believe that he said only the Father knows. So why are we arguing and being man-made? Why? And I don't know. And again, I'm being very serious. I don't know. I mean, if somebody could explain that to me, that'd be awesome. But I just say only the Father knows. So we're supposed to take each day. We're not promised tomorrow, so be a good steward of today. Make a phone call. There's so many things that we can get into of what people can do, but faith and prayer without action is dead, and that's biblical. That's not what Sue says. So that's kind of what I would say is that, and you don't want to be with the 5 talents. The one is, well, I'm not going to do anything with that talent,
Right.
because the one that didn't do anything with the talent, boy, oh boy, did he get in trouble.
Good point.
So we want the Lord to say, well done.
Right. A person that will just pray and say, well, I'm just going to pray and not be involved, they're probably an unbeliever, because real prayer is conversing with the Lord and responding. When I talk when I talk to Wayne or Steve or one of these men on the phone, we converse. Real prayer with God is talking to Him and saying, what do I need to do today as father, as husband, as a churchman, like Sue's doing it in her calling and ministry here. And so this idea that you bring the Lord some kind of Christmas list, that's praying, that is really, in my opinion, as a pastor, one of the highest forms of mockery, to think that you are so special in His eyes that you just can bring Him petitions and He can't wait to fill your grocery list. He wants you to converse with Him, but He wants the idea of an exchange, and that's why we enter with confession of sin, and then we need to hear from God. My prayers in the morning starts out, how should I pray this morning, Lord? How can I pray for me? Yes. And when I get quiet, He speaks to my heart. Well, you know this is what you're overdoing, this is what you're underdoing, and this is what you need to be silent about. Then how do I, do as a husband, and just go down the list. And I assure you, the Lord will fill your heart. But this idea of just giving God a grocery list, that person really needs to rethink their relationship with who Jesus is, because He's going to say on that day, no matter how much you prayed, I never knew you, if you are not conversing and hearing back from the Lord in your
And I want to just say too, I think that to say that I'm just going to pray about this, I think that's just really a cop-out.
Yep.
And I think that as long as we take that position, we're going to see the bad people take over this country. And we as Christians, as true believers, we must stand for God, stand for His Word,
Amen.
Stand for the gospel, and stand for what is right. And if we just do that, we're going to have to do more than just pray, I think.
As far as also some people say, well, I don't want to get involved in politics. Well, again, what I always say is you kind of have to have it lighthearted too. You say, well, I don't either. I don't want to get involved in politics either, because you know what politics is, right? Poly means many, and ticks is bloodsuckers. Okay, so I don't want to get involved in that. But you know what? You can't compartmentalize. If you are a true Christian, you can't compartmentalize your faith and your civic duty.
Right. Absolutely.
Everybody, has a worldview. It's either biblical or pagan. The problem is the Christian is compartmentalizing their biblical worldview. And I think that we have to look back, and I was telling the pastors earlier, I said, I've had the privilege of sitting with a lot of pastors, and again, some people say, I don't want to get involved in politics. I go, well, who did Jesus speak to? Jesus spoke to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Well, who were they? They were the government of the day.
Sure.
So the government is on His shoulders, but we're given dominion. So we're supposed to be, stewards and being held people accountable. who, you know, I talk to different candidates all the time. That's what I love to do when there's a primary. I love to sit down and ask them questions. I will sit with 2.5 to 3 hours with them.
Amen.
And I will ask not little, you know, softball questions. I'm
Yes.
asking, who's going to guide you? Who's, you know, where's your moral compass? Who's guiding you?
Right.
What's going to do this? Who are you accountable to? And I even ask, well, what are you running for? They don't even know what they're running for.
Amen.
So, but we have to be good stewards of who we're getting, you know, who are we electing? And we're going to be held accountable for the people that we're electing. You know, so.
And Christ said that we as Christians should be salt and light in the culture.
Yes. But know how to speak with people, you know, and we have that's one real quick thing. We at WIN have a methodology of how do you confront people without losing your witness, but standing for Christ. Ephesians 6:13 says, and having done all, you stand. But you have to know what you're standing for.
Yes.
What do you believe? Why do you believe it? And you know, Josh McDowell took 100 pastors and said, why are you a Christian and why are you a pastor? And half of them couldn't tell him. And I'll guarantee you, a lot of people in the church
Absolutely.
pews, they don't know why. They kind of feel, but they don't know why. And we need to know why we're standing for Christ.
Amen.
And then I love what's on the back of this wall here. It says, are you an armor bearer? Are you putting on the whole armor of God and walking in your authority? As Christians, we must walk in our authority. And I think God will bless all of us if we start worrying about what He thinks and not what everybody else thinks.
And Sue, we really thank you for that introduction, and we're looking forward to that for the next 2 days as you visit with pastors, as you visit with students, as you visit with student workers, and you visit with us. We want to learn from you more about how you interact with pastors and with churches, and we think that we can benefit very much from your experience. So we thank you for coming to visit with us.
Well,
Amen.
thank you, because I'll learn more from you than you can possibly imagine. But thank you